There are moments in life when something shifts, not loudly, not dramatically, but so clearly that you can't unfeel it once it happens. A moment when the self you've been trying to protect or perform for others steps quietly aside, and something more honest, more steady begins to surface. Welcome to Quiet Currents. I'm your host, Kenneth Pearson, and I am the founder and program designer at Live a Haiku Life. In this episode, we're exploring the seventh principle in this practice: express with authenticity, valuing true expression over perfection, and being honest with yourself and others about your emotions and experiences. Authenticity isn't always about speaking up or standing out. Sometimes it's about sitting still with yourself, somewhere unfamiliar, and letting the performance fall away. It was the winter of my MFA residency. I had traveled across the ocean to England to a place called Wroxton Abbey, a former monastery turned academic retreat center, steeped in history, surrounded by still gardens and thick, quiet woods. I had spent so much of my life until that point trying to figure out how to be, how to show up in a way that made sense to the world. I had titles, accomplishments, personas. I knew how to speak the language of professionalism. I knew how to be what others expected. What I didn't know was how to sit with myself and just be me. Wroxton Abbey changed that. There was a room tucked away in the basement at the bottom of a winding stone staircase, a dimly lit space with century-old walls and low ceilings, used now as a quiet lounge or study nook. Most nights, it sat empty. One evening, I slipped down there alone. No classes, no deadlines, no voices. Just the hum of old architecture and the breath of stillness. And I sat in the quiet in another country, away from the life I had carefully curated. And something in me softened. I looked at my notebooks, realized I had been trying too hard to write in a way that fit a mold, a voice that sounded right, but not true. In that space, surrounded by silence, history, and nothing familiar, I began to hear my own voice more clearly. Not the polished one, the real one. It wasn't an epiphany. There were no fireworks, just presence and permission. Permission to write the way I felt, to say what I meant, to be less concerned with being impressive and more concerned with being honest. That evening in that room was the beginning of a shift I didn't even know I needed. I started to write differently. I started to live differently. And it all began with sitting down, alone, and letting myself just be, without performing. Authenticity isn't loud. It's not always bold or defiant. It doesn't ask to be center stage. Authenticity is a quiet, steady alignment. It's what happens when your inner world and outer expression begin to match. When you stop trying to say the right thing and start saying the true thing. In haiku, there's no room for pretense. The poem's too short, too honest. You can't hide behind complex metaphors or elaborate constructs. Haiku invites you to write what is, as it is. And in doing so, you begin to notice what's real for you too. To express with authenticity means to choose honesty over performance, vulnerability over perfection, meaning over polish. We all wear masks, sometimes out of necessity. We play roles, we adapt to settings, we learn what's expected and offer a version of ourselves that fits the room. But if we never remove the mask, we start to forget who's underneath it. Authentic expression isn't about rejecting the world. It's about remembering yourself within it. It's about pausing long enough to ask, is this really me? Or is this who I've learned to be? Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is speak gently from that quiet place inside, without needing approval, without explaining yourself, just saying, this is where I am. You don't have to make sweeping changes to begin expressing with authenticity. It can start with a journal entry, a moment of stillness before responding, an honest answer when someone asks how you're doing, and you tell them the truth. It can begin with art, or with silence, with naming a feeling without judging it, with not rushing to explain yourself, with allowing your voice to tremble and still letting it be heard. It's a practice, a daily invitation, a return. That night in the room in the basement, I didn't transform. I didn't suddenly understand everything about myself, but I stopped pretending for a moment. I let the stillness do its work. I let my truth be enough. Maybe that's where all authenticity begins, not in knowing who we are perfectly, but in pausing long enough to listen. Thank you for joining me for this reflection and this episode of Quiet Currents. If this episode resonated with you and you want to continue exploring how presence, simplicity, and authenticity can shape your life, I invite you to visit the Live a Haiku Life website at www.liveahaikulife.com. Until next time, may your moments be mindful, your connections meaningful, and your life a quiet current of presence and simplicity.